Every day, millions of people scroll past infographics telling the exact same motivational story. They list the most powerful world leaders and reduce their entire trajectories down to a single, relatable first job. According to these viral charts, the head of the Catholic Church began his career as a nightclub bouncer in Buenos Aires. The Russian president is presented as a shadowy KGB agent operating in East Germany. The KGB was the primary security and intelligence agency for the Soviet Union. And the Prime Minister of India is famously categorized as a simple tea seller. That story originates right here at the Vadnagar railway station, where he helped his father serve passengers as a child. These labels offer incredibly appealing inspiration for anyone starting at the bottom, but they construct a completely false map of how systemic power is actually acquired. While those early jobs are technically verifiable events, relying on them as the starting point obscures the brutal, highly calculated strategies actually required to reach the highest levels of global authority. To understand how ultimate authority is secured, we have to look past the quirky teenage jobs and examine what these individuals did between the ages of 25 and 40. This is the grooming phase. This chart maps out a metric called transition velocity. It defines the measurable time it takes a leader to move from their early career into supreme power. The horizontal axis measures age from 0 to 80, and the vertical axis plots the level of systemic influence. Plotting the verified historical data of modern world leaders reveals that there is no single path. Instead, the data splits into three distinct, repeatable architectures of power: elite, grassroots, and pivot. By looking at the actual years spent climbing, we can objectively rank the return on investment for each of these three strategies and determine which timeline yields the highest success rate. Internalizing how these three frameworks operate separates a serious political strategist from a passive consumer of social media motivation. The first architecture relies on intense early privilege to bypass the traditional political grind entirely. Consider Emmanuel Macron. He graduated from the ENA. The ENA is France's elite national school of administration, which granted him immediate entry into the upper echelons of the Rothschild investment banking firm. Donald Trump followed a similar structural logic. He did not start from scratch. He inherited an already successful real estate operation from his father. Trump took that conservative outer borough wealth and aggressively risked it on high-profile projects, building a massive luxury brand directly in Manhattan. This chart shows the result of elite inputs. Starting with millions or institutional backing lets these individuals skip decades of local campaigning. They jump straight into high-stakes environments almost out of college. But skipping the lower ladder creates a severe relatability deficit with the public. Without a history of ground-level struggle, elite starters are forced to retroactively manufacture populist appeal later in their careers to compensate. The exact opposite strategy is the grassroots grind. This requires entering ground-level political activism during the teenage years and slowly building influence. Narendra Modi fits this model perfectly. His defining career phase was not the railway tea stall, it was his decision to join the RSS as a full-time worker. The RSS is a massive Indian nationalist volunteer organization where he submitted to decades of disciplined ground-level labor across India. Leaders like Giorgia Meloni in Italy and Recep Tayyip Erdogan in Turkey share this exact blueprint. Both of them joined youth political wings in their early teens. Committing to the lowest levels of party politics for years generates incredibly loyal organizational foundations and unshakable populist credibility among voters. This contrasting timeline shows the trade-off for that credibility: a massive loss of speed. The grassroots method requires a grueling 30 to 40-year horizontal progression before finally spiking upward into national power in the leader's 50s, 60s, and beyond. It demands decades of continuous lower-level maneuvering, surviving endless political cycles, and the ever-present threat of career plateauing. The grassroots path offers the most equitable entry point, but it requires a lifetime of high attrition endurance, making it statistically the hardest architecture to survive. A third option bypasses both the elite establishment and the slow political climb entirely. This is the unconventional pivot, where individuals master a distinctly non-governing sphere before moving into leadership. Volodymyr Zelensky ran a comedy studio and starred in political TV shows. He leveraged that immense public visibility to assume the Ukrainian presidency at 41. Vladimir Putin applied a similar lateral move. He shaped his early ambition inside Soviet intelligence, choosing the KGB over traditional politics to build hidden leverage. Even Pope Francis utilized this structure. He traded early odd jobs for decades inside the rigid Jesuit order before attaining ultimate authority in Vatican City. These leaders generated massive external leverage, whether that was national fame, state secrets, or moral authority, and weaponized it to execute a rapid, lateral jump into power. A late-stage pivot effectively cuts the line. But taking office without administrative experience creates steep vulnerabilities when it comes to the actual mechanics of governing. If we consolidate all of this data into a single scatter plot, we can definitively rank the speed of these transitions. The horizontal axis represents starting privilege, and the vertical axis plots the time required to reach power. The fastest ascensions belong to leaders like Macron at 39 or Zelensky at 41. They required highly specialized alternative platforms, like elite finance or mass fame, to accelerate their rise. Conversely, leaders who started with true odd jobs or grassroots activism cluster tightly together. They universally required the longest transition times, often peaking in their 60s or 70s. The viral memes have the relationship exactly backward. Having a humble first job does not make the rise to power easier. The data shows it guarantees the timeline will take decades longer. If you are simply consuming media, discard the quirky first job narrative entirely. Scrutinize exactly what a leader was doing between the ages of 25 and 40. That is where you find the truth of their power. If you are actively building your own career and lack elite institutional access, the grassroots grind is your only viable path. You must start immediately and prepare for a 30-year commitment. If you are a late bloomer planning a lateral move, understand that pivoting into a new hierarchy only works if you have already secured undeniable leverage in your current industry. You cannot pivot late from the bottom. The historical records of global ascendance prove that true authority is never accidentally stumbled upon from a tea stall or a nightclub door. It is a ruthless, systematic architecture built intentionally over a lifetime.